It's a little ironic, isn't it, that Final Fantasy VII is a game about letting go, accepting death, accepting that everything will eventually come to an end. And here I am constantly thinking about it for my entire life, and we're 2 or 3 games deep into a remake of the whole thing. This doesn't feel like acceptance to me, from either me or the original creators. It's not really a criticism, it's just a shower thought that I had this morning that I thought was quite interesting. It's been a week or so since I last picked this game up. I am planning on going back to it and beating it 100%, or as close as I can get to 100% without having to go through it again on hard mode. I needed a break. After I beat it, I was just broken. I've been trying to investigate why this is in my own mind. The story ended up pretty much exactly where I figured it would in terms of its place in the narrative, albeit with some changes that I couldn't have possibly predicted. There's a lot to unpack, which I'm still trying to get my head around in terms of my reaction to it all. The amount that I've cried and all the sleep that I've lost over it. When Remake ended, I was sad for a couple of days, but then I was onto my usual analysis of the story and trying to figure out what happened and what the ending meant, and because I don't really watch ending explain videos, it took me a while to kind of figure all that out for myself. This time though, it's not just about the story, it's more of a holistic breakage. I feel fulfilled, I feel empty, I feel listless, I'm ecstatic and I'm depressed. I'm everything all at the same time. It's exhausting and I can't let it go. I'm really trying, but I just can't. I'm starting to tear up again just trying to get these words out about it. Why did Rebirth get to me so much? I've been thinking about it for a week, and the only conclusion that I can draw is this. Final Fantasy VII, the original, it's about a lot of things. It's about environmentalism, it's about capitalism, it's about spiritualism, it's about fate, it's about identity. But first and foremost, it's a game about life. It's about discovering life through the lens of accepting death, and what that represents on a universal scale. To paraphrase what Katase said in an interview with Edge magazine, death comes suddenly. There's no notion of a good or a bad death. It leaves a great emptiness. He's talking specifically about the choice to have Aerith die quite early in the story, so you'd feel that loss, that emptiness, in the gameplay as much as the story. And then the game can teach you how to overcome it, how to find the life in it. It's a character-driven story, first and foremost, where Aerith, Barrett, Tifa, Cloud, Nanaki, Yuffie, Sephiroth, Marlene, Dyne, Vincent, hell, even Rufus, are all wrestling with this notion of death. They are driven completely by those that they have lost. They're having to navigate it in their own ways. I first played that game at a time where I was a little girl having to navigate the death of my own dad, at an age where I was not at all equipped to even begin to tackle something like that. The thing about Final Fantasy VII though, is that it's also a product of its time. I don't think it's controversial to say that the game was compromised. It wasn't actually finished. There's a lot of awkwardly worded dialogue and flat out missing or rushed story elements. The characters and world are absolutely the standout part of Final Fantasy VII. It's a thing that everyone remembers. But when you actually go back to it, you'd probably notice that everything is a little more rushed and direct than you remember. That's certainly something that stood out to me when I replayed it last year. It doesn't dilute the message or reduce the impact at all, in my opinion, but the characters are archetypes. They're archetypes that I relate to so heavily that it can bring me to tears just from the representative concept that each character fulfills. The characters of Final Fantasy VII are little low-poly abstractions of people that all fit so elegantly and effortlessly into the archetypes they represent. Little abstractions of people living in their little dioramas that I relate to so heavily. But this trilogy though, what this trilogy has done so far is it's taken these archetypes and spent dozens, hundreds of hours humanizing them. They've turned these archetypes into full-blown people in my mind. They're my friends. I love them. Over the past 82 hours, I've spent time with my friends. I've laughed along with them. I've cried along with them. Emotionally, I've struggled and fought alongside them. To me, this is one of the benefits of a game of this scale, of this length. You spend so much time with these people that it's hard not to become emotionally attached to them. They become real. They are humanized. But at the end of the story, I had to say goodbye, which has broken my heart. I didn't title that last video as goodbye purely because it was the last line of dialogue in the game, nor because the events that happened. It's also because I'm having to say goodbye to my friends. And it's not like you can really just go back and play this again. It's going to be good each time you do, but that first playthrough, to me, that's always the most special one, the most affecting one. I'm sure there's a lot of moments in your past that you would love to experience again for the first time. It's never quite the same the second time around. This is something I want to touch more on in my Final Fantasy X playthrough because it's very thematically relevant to that game. But when I say I wish I could erase my memory and go through all of this again, what I'm really saying is that I wish I could spend those times with my friends again, without the taint of the future getting in the way. There will never be a moment in my life again where I see Nanaki come out of nowhere doing the moonwalk and trying his best to pass off as humanoid. Not quite like that first time when I wasn't expecting it. That was a precious moment that I can hold on to, but I can never go back to that exact point again. And there are so many hundreds of little moments that over the course of this playthrough that are just like that I want to revisit for the first time. And I can't. I will never be able to do that. The goodbye is temporary, of course. They'll be back in a few years and I can go for all of this again, but that will be the last one. And the thing about having these strong connections with other people is that those people can be taken away at a moment's notice. Today could be the last day on Earth for the person that you cherish most, and you don't even know it. And I am so sorry that you have to deal with that. God, don't I know this to be true? I'm 35 years old and I have already lost more people in my life than I have truly connected with. Permanently lost them. At least physically. I've always said that people live on in your memories and dreams, and that's something I genuinely believe, but God, it doesn't stop it from hurting. So much of my life too has been defined by death, by those that had to leave me behind. What Final Fantasy VII as an overall message is desperate for you to realize is this isn't reason enough to hide away from these connections, because the bond outweighs the emptiness and grief that inevitably comes afterwards. The grief is necessary in its own way, because it represents a life that was worth being lived. And you can take that experience forward with you and learn from it, adapt it into something beautiful, truly valuable, like Sakaguchi did. Don't fall into despair. Don't give up. You are worth saving too. That is what Final Fantasy VII said to me many years ago when I was little, when I gave up, when I just wanted to go with my dad into the beyond. It wants you to take all of this with you and teach others the same lessons until inevitably it's your turn to join whatever waits us on the other side. I've spent my entire adult life doing that. It's the reason I became a therapist. Rebirth has taken all of this, tonally shifted things around and created new art with similar themes, humanized archetypal and stereotypical characters, and driven a story to emotional heights that just completely overwhelmed me, to the point of breaking. I cry at stuff all the time, it's something I'm very well known for, but to actually sob for hours and lose sleep? That's new. No game has done that before. Rebirth probably didn't do this on its own. It's down to the influence the original game had on me, and you could say that isn't fair to make a statement like that because of it, but the way they played off the original was clearly intentional. It feels like a game that was made solely for me. I guess that is my review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think it is the greatest game of a franchise made up of the greatest games.